Greetings, everyone who's watching. Thank you for joining us for our budget information session at Clifton Park-Halfmoon Public Library. I am Matt Cantor. I am on the Board of Trustees. I currently serve as the Treasurer of the Board of Trustees, and it is a pleasure to be presenting this to you. What I'm going to do tonight is go over the proposed budget for 2023 very briefly. This is part of our public information session, which we have offered in person for anybody who'd like to attend it. And we are also offering this recording for anybody who'd like to look at it. So I thank you for viewing. To just put this out there, the budget vote and trustee election will be held on Thursday, September 15th from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. Please make sure you join us, vote for the budget. We obviously would like you to support the budget. And also there will be 2 trustee candidates that are up for election this year. There are 2 seats from Half-Moon. So if you're from Half-Moon, you can vote for our trustees. The candidates are Maria McMunn and Megan Brown. So I would definitely welcome you to come out and vote for the trustees and support the budget. Now let's jump into the proposed budget for 2023. I won't read these, verbatim, because you certainly can review this and look at them. And I think they're out there on the web and elsewhere. And we also sent the budget mailer out, which has all this information in it. But I will say from a philosophy point of view, from the Board of Trustees point of view, that our goal is always to continue to provide the quality and level of service that everyone is used to from the library. We know the last few years have been challenging, and as we come back, there certainly is just as much need as ever for our library to provide the things that it has continued to provide. So our goal is to continue to make that happen with the expenditures, and we'll get to the revenues in a moment with the taxes. But that's always the challenge. We would love to spend as much as we possibly could, but we have to be responsible fiscally. So our goal is to try to keep the expenditures to where we can provide the service that we need to provide and give you the quality that you are used to seeing from the library. Here's a quick breakdown of the proposed expenses for 2023. You'll see what we did in 2022, and then next to that, you will see the 2023 proposed budget. Of course, we know everything in the world is going up. Everything is increasing. We've heard about inflation. We've heard about all that fun stuff. So you'll note that we have some jumps in there. We have a couple of jumps in facility, equipment, and operations. Those are really largely due to exactly what I just said. We have increasing costs for insurance, for example. We have increasing costs for utilities. And when you look at those numbers relative to the overall budget, they're not that big. When you look at the change is what looks drastic. It's really not as bad as it looks. When you look at the highest line, of course, the salaries and benefits, our staff are what drives the library. And that's where the majority of our investment goes. And that change is modest. We've done what we needed to do with that. So the expenses have increased overall about 3.14% across all of the different categories that we need to increase money. So that's the expenses for 2023. For 2023, the revenues, the majority of our revenue is always going to come from the taxes that we're able to raise from Clifton Park and Half-Moon. And I will get into how that happens in just a moment here. But there have been some changes in the equalization rates. That's part of how we calculate what the tax rate for everybody should be. The board has always been very firm, as long as I've been involved with it, that we try to comply with the tax cap. We are not necessarily required to do that, but we feel strongly that we should. The other thing to note is that the revenue from fines has been decreasing steadily over the past several years. That's been ongoing. So we know we won't see quite as much money from that. Well, it's not a huge piece of the budget. It does bear consideration. You have to look at all the different pieces. So let's take a look at how this breaks down. You will see for 2022, the total adopted tax levy, and 2023, our proposed levy, and we have asked for 3.88% more, which again is tax cap compliant. We have not raised it more than we should have to stay within that. We have estimated things like other public funds and donations and grants, and also interest, because the interest rates have been very variable as well in the last several years. And you can see we have reduced fees and fines by quite a bit as well. We are conservative with those estimates. They could come in higher, they could come in lower, we don't really know. But those don't really have a huge impact on our budget, and we're able to adjust that. But the majority of our budget is going to come from the tax levy between Clifton Park and Half-Moon. So let's talk about the strategy with the tax levies a little bit and how we approach that. We want to make sure, again, like I said, that we are compliant with New York State tax cap legislation, which would limit property tax growth to the lesser of either 2% or the inflation rate. And of course, we know what the inflation rate looks like. But we will calculate that out, and we'll leave this slide out there for people to look at that if they'd like to. I won't get too much into the math on that. And our second goal is also to make sure, and this is important, that we do our very best to make sure that someone who owns a house in Half-Moon and someone who owns a house in Clifton Park of equal market value, that's critical, not the assessed value, because the assessments can be very different, but equal market value. What would it sell for? We want to make sure that those two households are paying the same amount of money. And that takes a little bit of doing. We have to make sure that we account for things like the market values that are constantly changing. They're increasing, things are going up. And our towns don't reassess every year. That's kind of like a mixed bag, but we don't necessarily know what the assessment values are, and we have to factor that in. So we have to kind of come up with a calculation that will let us make things equal for two houses of equal market value across the two towns. And here we've got an example of that. We've used a house that market value is $250,000 in Clifton Park and $250,000 in Half-Moon. And when we calculate this out based on what it is that we're looking at with the numbers that we currently have, we see that what we've done is make sure that for a $250,000 house in Clifton Park or Half-Moon, that the taxes that will be paid towards the library for the year will be $140.75. Pretty modest amount of taxes. So that's how we've calculated all that. That would be the impact on somebody who owns a $250,000 house. And again, that's market value, not assessed value. That would be a little different. The assessed values are usually a bit lower. So here's what the whole picture looks like across both towns for the entire assessed value of the towns and for what the entire market value of the district would look like. And then kind of how all this calculates out and what the change looks like from 2021 to 2022. So you kind of have some extra numbers for those that are really more interested in it. And I can leave that up for just a moment for that. But as I've said, we are looking very, very modest increase. Most of this is just to support the natural growth that has happened in the economy and to support the services and the staff. I continue to drive the library. Our board feels very strongly that our staff is just amazing, and they have done some wonderful work. Pandemic notwithstanding, they continue to provide a wonderful level of service. And so it is important for us to support them. Equally, we also have to support the programs and the facilities. Our building is starting to get a little bit older. We're starting to see some issues that we need to address. So those are all factored into this. And that's where we've come up with the budget that we have. And of course, you can certainly go to the website. You can certainly reach out to the library in a variety of different ways if there are any questions. But again, I would strongly urge you and encourage you to please come vote and support the library on September 15th between 7 a.m. and 9 p.m. right at the library. And yes, there are absentee ballots available. Again, contact the library if you have any questions about that. We'll be happy to help you out. And I sincerely hope we can count on your support. Thank you very much.